Welcome to Last Turn. This is episode 6, brought to you by your co-hosts Bart and Evan. How are you doing today, Evan?
I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it right now.
Why are you feeling it?
Because I'm popular and I'm getting a phone call, and that means that people really just think I'm the coolest. And also because this card, maybe heard of it, Caverns Below, is getting changed. Technically, I guess that card's not getting changed. They're nerfing Crystal Rogue. They're going to require that you need... Oh, no, they are changing the quest. You need 5 minions that have the same name to get to Crystal Core.
Right, Crystal Core is the same. It's Caverns Below that's getting changed.
For some reason, I next leveled myself and thought that they were doing the nerf I had predicted, which was to make everything into a 4/4 off Crystal Core, which I kind of wanted because then it would be safe from Priest's spells. But no, I guess they must have thought of that.
Yeah, that's for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
You should not wish that on Hearthstone.
No. So now instead of only needing to play 4 minions with the same name, which before the card was out sounded like it was going to be difficult, and one of the less good quests, we learned that it was surprisingly easy, largely because of Firefly, Igneous Elemental kind of stuff. But now they're making it harder to get this quest, and that's going to have a really big impact on the metagame for a bunch of different reasons. There's definitely decks that could have existed and were maybe even made obvious. Like, there's always clever new ways to use what's available, but some things are pushed by Blizzard, like the Priest quest, making a Priest deck that uses Death Rattle minions with the quest to get your 5 mana 8/8 taunt that heals you. That seemed like a really good idea
totally.
to the players who were shown it before the set came out, and people tried it, and they got killed by 5/5s. 5/5 Stone Tusk Boars, in fact. And try as they might, having a game plan that will frequently go beyond 6-7 turns just makes you really susceptible to the Crystal Rogue deck, because they will almost definitely have their quest done by turn 6 or 7, and their reward is extremely difficult to defeat. All of their cards become not just so much value, but so lethal potentially.
Right.
It's reminiscent of things they've nerfed and banned in the past, like Warsong Commander, making a bunch of Grim Patrons that attack for 15, with charge, immediately doing 15 damage. They don't want that to be easy, and it kind of is in Crystal Rogue. And so the slower decks, the first one I think of is the Priest Quest deck. I also think the Mage Quest deck is kind of not been a thing, at least to some extent because of Quest Rogue.
Yeah, I mean, there are, of course, other factors. So I think it'd be interesting to step back for a second and ask, all of this begs the question, is this really going to kill the deck? What do you think?
Oh, that's okay. I guess that's really where to start. Do I actually think this is going to kill the deck? No. Very often, if you were able to do 4, you were able to do more.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You usually just use your extra gas to, kill your opponent 1 turn later.
If you've never played the deck, it might seem like you just barely get to 4 minions off of your 2 bounce effects or 3 bounce effects. 3 or 4 minions of the same name. Maybe you get lucky with a duplicate, or maybe you get lucky off a Mimic Vat. But really, it often comes
Mimic
down...
Pod, you mean? Mimic Vat is a cube card in Magic.
I say that so often. Mimic Pod. A pod and a vat are basically synonyms.
That's true.
Letters.
That's true.
Mimic Pod. But really, Vanish actually plays a huge role, and so does Igneous Elemental. Igneous Elemental is pretty much a card you keep every single game.
Sure.
And because of Igneous Elemental and an Igneous Elemental and a Vanish completes your quest.
Right. Yeah,
So
that's pretty insane.
that's 2 cards. and you draw 3 in your opening hand. One's a quest, but then you draw a card for your turn. So it's not it's definitely not unrealistic to play 5. They didn't make the quest impossible. They didn't change much about how the deck has to operate either. The deck can mostly even keep the same list. It is possible that it's gonna, slide more towards Tar Creepers again.
Yeah, totally.
And slightly slower stuff, but really most of the deck is gonna remain static. It's just gonna be a few turns slower.
Yeah, so I feel the same way about it, actually. I think that a lot of people are supposing that this will kill the deck, and I do think that we're not going to see a lot of Crystal Rook for a while, but I do think if the metagame came to a spot where people were playing mostly slow decks, playing Crystal Core would be insane. I still think that it's great. It's gonna... I don't want to say great. I think it's strong enough to be a deck that works. I think you're not just going to be playing a collection of bad cards that don't do anything. I think that this does make its worst matchups horrible. So, in the current iteration of Crystal Core, you can beat aggro. Aggro is certainly your hardest matchup because you need several turns of not really interacting with your opponent to set up your quest, but once you set up your quest, you can totally recover from a bad spot on the board. But if you have to take an additional turn or two to finish your quest, that could be... That could really be deadly in those matchups. But against a fatigue deck, against a deck that gives you infinite time, you don't really care if it's a turn or two slower. You're still going to win.
Yeah, if their goal is to just set their life total to 40, you can beat that.
Yeah, easily.
Anything like building up armor, something like that, something that's not going to be killing you, and is just going to continue to give you time. The quest could be 9 minions with the same name, or 10 minions with the same name, and still be able to get there.
Yeah, in those matchups, right.
But yeah, so these aggro decks sort of punish you exponentially for not dealing with their boards.
Right.
Like the Murloc Paladin, Token Druid, Token Shaman, they'll get one thing out, and it could be one scary thing like a Vicious Fledgling, or they could have a couple things pretty fast. And then if you don't deal with those the turn they're out, suddenly there's also a Flame Tongue Totem. Or now they play another minion in a Power of the Wild. And then if you still don't deal with it, you're going to get Bloodlusted, you're going to get Savage Roared, they're going to evolve. So attacking 1 or 2 more turns on for them to exponentially get stronger is really bad for Quest Rogue in those matchups.
Definitely.
Because they have so few cards that interact with the exponential problem that the aggro deck is presenting. So maybe one shift that we would see is more lists would have Backstab. We might even see Eviscerate. We might see Fan of Knives, possibly.
Yeah, the deck is running prep. I've noticed that about the deck. I haven't ever played it. I don't actually own the quest, but
it's a blast.
Yeah, it seems really fun. I've been pretty close
is a good time.
I've been pretty close to crafting it a few times, but it seems to me like the deck has a lot of flex slots that you could, just because the core package is not that many cards. So it seems like you would be able to, hyper tech yourself against aggro, which you could, a lot of decks are kind of doing now already. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I think that in the current state of things, Crystal Rogue will be pretty bad. But if the metagame were to change to become a bit slower, then overall the deck's win rate could be above 50% still.
Yeah, it's part of the problem is that Eviscerate does nothing for your plan.
Yeah, that's an issue.
Really, the closest you can come to doing a good job interacting with killing their stuff is Southsea Deckhand. And then really the best card is Glacial Shard.
Glacial Shard, sure.
Glacial Shard in the aggro matchup is a snap keep. And there's nothing like it really. So you can't really put in more of them. Sadly.
Yeah, it might yeah, I definitely see that by putting in your tech cards, you're not these are tech cards that take up a slot. They're not like, crabs which develop a minion and you're an early game deck, so you like developing minions. These are cards that you play them and they're gone.
Perhaps things like Mistress of Mixtures, things that are almost the control answer to aggro. Also, Tar Creeper would be pretty appealing. And I do think Backstab is good. And if really Murloc Paladin is shining in the post nerf meta, then you would want to be running Hungry Crabs.
Yeah, right.
So there's a few ways. There's plenty of ways for the deck to adapt to fighting off these aggro decks. And people are going to want to play Control after the nerf. It's
totally.
Almost like an opportunity, just like psychologically, to start fooling around, dust off some of these old fatiguey decks that you hadn't been touching because of Crystal Core decks.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that could be really fun. That's something I totally forgot about Amara until you mentioned her, but that would be, one possibility. I know, it's so easy to forget
She
about
just
that
got
card.
a little tear in the corner of her eye. She's only going to put you to 39 now, Bart.
It's still probably good enough. Yeah, that's definitely a good example. Jade Druid is another one. So if a lot of other people are going to be moving towards control decks, or control decks are going to become slightly stronger and slightly more prevalent, then playing a deck like Jade Druid is great because it's a control deck one, so you get to sort of have your cake and eat it too because it's the control deck that beats all the control decks. So,
yeah, but if you look at stats, it is just thrashed by Quest Rogue.
Yeah.
But if you've ever played the matchup, both decks can win. Skilled player, the most skilled player can easily be the consistent winner regardless of which deck they're piloting, and so this is definitely gonna close that gap on the average win rate between those two decks. And yeah, that's just all. Jade Druid is already strong, so this is just gonna push that more. Though that's another deck that kind of just has it has a period at the end of it. It's not a fatigue situation. Eventually, you get rolled by a Jade Druid if you don't beat them soon enough. So that could actually be another thing that prevents Amara shining. Ironically.
Yeah, I've always thought of Crystal Core and Jade Druid in similar ways. In that
they are.
They put, they both sort of put a speed requirement on your deck, but in different ways. One of them, the Jade Druid tries to survive into a late game, but it really shines when the other deck gives it, 7 to 8 free turns, where it can just advance its Jades and then combo off with Auctioneer and just create an unbeatable board every turn.
Mm-hmm.
And Crystal Core is doing something kind of similar. It's trying to create an unbeatable board, but it's doing so much earlier.
Yeah, and it doesn't escalate.
Right.
It's just like once it's sort of like the event horizon of a black hole.
Yeah, totally.
Once you go past that, GG. Doesn't matter how fast you're going, it's over. Jade Druid, if you've been holding on to your executes and your brawls, when they make an 11-11 and a 12-12, you might be able to hold them off for a bit. But then there's going to be a 13-13 and 14-14.
Right.
And they'll just grind you out, and they're not going to run out of deck. So it's sort of like straight up, if you try to fatigue me, then you lose. Versus, I'm going to kill you way before you can even consider it.
Yeah.
So that's how their plans differ. But yeah, they both kind of are hoping for these free turns to set up these nonsensical situations.
Yep, for sure. So it'll be interesting. I mean, maybe what were you going to say?
I was going to say, you make a good point about how Quest Rogue becoming less powerful and less popular would mean Jade Druid would be more popular, which would then mean that the fatigue decks that we originally were saying might become more popular would get beaten by Jade Druid. So it's pretty hard to predict. It's going to definitely be largely up to player preference and what people like. At least immediately when the nerf happens, because there won't be the statistics. But I do expect that people will still be playing Quest Rogue. I do expect that Jade Druid is going to go up. And I do think people are going to try more Taunt Warrior, with the Quest. Also more just old school, Fatigue Warrior without the Quest.
Yeah,
I
sure.
was seeing some of that. I think people will try that too. Amara, Quest Mage. I think a lot of those probably won't work.
Sure.
But I do think Taunt Warriors presence and win rate are gonna go up. Taunt Warrior is
Yeah.
one of the decks that really, really is like, you quest rogues.
Yeah, it's because it has a good matchup against a lot of the swarm aggro decks
Some
that
of the
plenty of
best decks. It has a surprisingly good win rate against Token Druid.
Yeah, that I mean, I played way more Token Druid than anyone should, and that is, when you see them play the quest on turn one, it's really discouraging. It's a hard matchup to win. They need to draw badly, and you need to draw well. You need to push a ton of damage before they can even begin to stabilize, and then you need to be able to punch through their first few minions and close the game really fast. It is a hard matchup, and it's a hard matchup for a lot of Swarm decks, because a lot of the Swarm decks are so
Hmm.
all in that they lack removal. I mean, something like Shaman could probably sneak by with Devolve, but even still, not all of the Swarm decks are like Shaman. They're all, some of them are a little bit more fair, like Pirate Warrior.
Yeah, I think Taunt Warrior might also have a positive win rate against Pirate Warrior on Vicious Syndicate,
I
like
see.
55% or something like that. So that's Taunt
That's huge.
Warrior's like really great deck. It beats. It doesn't. I don't think it has a good match against Burn Mage, but it'll crush a Freeze Mage.
Oh yeah.
Um, it's not like it has a bad match against Burn Mage as far as I know. Um, Probably like 50-50, but uh, it can just crush Token Druid. Um, and I know that I've gotten Taunt Warriors down to like 2 as Token Druid, and I have a huge board. And then I just lose, and I have no idea what happened. It's like
Yeah.
about 5 minutes, just like somehow the whole world got reversed. So that's definitely an appealing reason to play Taunt Warrior.
Yeah.
But you're right, Token Shaman. Another appealing thing about it is it does have a pretty good plan against a Taunt Warrior.
Sure.
The Sulfurious hero power, the Ragnaros hero power, just sucks against a Token Druid or Token Shaman.
Oh yeah, because they just
Um,
get a free minion every time they spend 2 mana on their hero power.
and then almost every other card in their deck is multiple minions like Primal Fin Totem.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
and with Mana Tide and Evolve and Bloodlust, you can just get card advantage and take advantage of the fact that Taunt Warrior isn't putting pressure on you, and sort of almost play a control-y way, and then just devolve Bloodlust and beat them.
Yep,
So
sure.
Shaman has a lot of play against Taunt Warrior, I think, which will make it another good pick for when the nerf drops.
Yeah, I think it's a good pick right now against the metagame. It does not have a lot of terrible matchups, and I think it's going to get a little better, especially if people are experimenting with slower, greedier strategies because of the Crystal Core nerf. Then
Hmm.
this deck could pretty easily prey on those strategies. Because of its both its resilience and its package of answers being so good and so inexpensive. Devolve is a really awesome card, partly because it's 2 mana and you can play Devolve and Bloodlust on the same turn.
I also just remembered that in Journey to Angora they introduced elementals.
Oh yeah, right. Didn't they do that? Yeah, they did.
Totally forgot. This could also, some strategies were pretty strong. Like I think Paladin had a reasonable set of things it could do with elementals. Priest can get extra Lyras or Radiant elementals off of the 4/5 Servant of Kalimos,
It's pretty good.
which is interesting for like a combo control elemental kind of deck. And then Shaman has Kalimos, which is a really strong card. And you can definitely play a grindy elemental game with Spirit Echo. Do you remember that
Oh
card?
yeah. Oh, of
It's
course, totally.
for anyone who doesn't know, 3 mana. Gives all your minion death rattle. When this minion dies, put a copy of it in your hand.
Yeah, so Spirit Echo it sees play in Wild in a control shaman deck. It's a
That sounds
really
fun.
it's abusive.
It's
It is a strong card.
So that card is really hoping to gradually, turn by turn, get more value and then beat your opponent, and that is the kind of strategy that gets wrecked by Quest Rogue.
Oh, totally.
So Spirit Echo might be a card that we start seeing more of, and rather than these very aggressive piratey token shamans, we might start seeing a shift towards using Spirit Echoes and Jinyu Water Speakers, that kind of card.
Yeah, I mean that could be really interesting. We have not seen a lot of elementals or even true mid-range strategies outside of Paladin. So it'd be cool to see some more of those grindy decks come back. I'm looking forward to it. I think that we're going to see a lot of decks that we haven't seen for a long time, and probably some new ones, because this deck is going to be mostly absent, but still probably present, especially when the metagame has adapted to the nerf.
Yeah, there's definitely going to just be like a dip because it just got nerfed, and some people disenchanted it, and then it'll slowly come back up some amount in popularity and win rate, but it probably won't be where it is now. It'll definitely be below where it is now.
Definitely, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just straight weaker, so it's going to be less good.
And it's just so much less appealing of a pick because it's more like it goes from you can beat basically anything, but you have some really good matchups to there's certain matchups that it beats, and then it just becomes sort of like a rock paper scissors thing.
Yeah.
It's going to win certain matchups really successfully, and then a bunch of others lose pretty badly.
Yeah, totally. And those decks tend to...
Sort of like Freeze Mage.
Yeah, a little bit like Freeze Mage. I mean, those, that can be, in the right metagame, playing that kind of deck with such variance in its win rates and its matchup win percentages is, like, completely acceptable if the right distribution of decks is present. But a lot of the time, you're just going to be more consistent playing a deck that has a reasonable matchup against everything.
Yeah, and it'll also, I think, still be like showing up in tournaments every now and then as like a tech pick, because sometimes people will have a Freeze Mage. They basically make a lineup that they will maybe lose one match with this deck that's weak, but they always have one deck that's almost unbeatable to the other decks that they can't beat. Like what's the game mode that they do in tournaments now called?
Conquest.
Conquest, yes, in Conquest style. That's one of the more tricky ways to arrange your list of decks is to actually have a bunch of sort of silver bullet type decks. If you're really confident in your prediction of what people are going to be bringing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you see that most of your opponents are bringing control heavy lineups, bringing a Crystal Core deck could be spicy and very, very good. And it might take something like that for people to recognize that maybe the Crystal Core is not totally dead. It's just a little bit deeper in the Caverns Below.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
Is Dragon Warrior bad?
Yeah,
the opposite can happen too.
Yeah, I mean this happens in all sorts of other card games. I mean, I know in Magic, in Modern, Golgari Grave Troll got unbanned and then rebanned, and when it was rebanned, a lot of people it turns out it is actually too good. But when people just replaced it with a Dredge 4 card, and Dredge was still plenty playable, it just took people a little bit a few tournaments to discover that, and now you see that deck just not dominating every single tournament and at maybe a more acceptable prevalence in the metagame.
That's the destiny of Quest Rogue.
Yep, we're going to see something like that too. I think it's going to be very, very similar in that the deck is still playable. It's just not as ridiculous and absurd.
It's probably not a big enough change to bring back Warlock.
I was just going to ask you about that.
If you're trying to think of like how big is this nerf going to be, I'm definitely excited about it, but that's really just because I have a personal love of control decks.
Yeah.
In general, it's really not going to do a whole lot, I don't think. But I do think it's a good idea.
Yeah, me too.
It would definitely also limit what they can do with future cards if they didn't address this now. Like, if they could never print anything else like Glacial Shard that costs a low amount of mana, for example. for years, just because of Crystal Rogue.
It totally removes design space for them to make this deck, because like you said, those 1-mana cards would be just, this deck could pick them up and abuse them so easily. If it's a 1-mana card with a good battle cry, it does not care about the stats at all.
They're going to be 5s.
Yeah, exactly. You could make the card a 0/1, and if it had a good enough battle cry, this deck would jam 2 copies of it and love it, and it'd be the best card in the deck. But also, there's the other aspect of design space that it removes, which are like the late game strategies.
Mm-hmm.
And, a little bit like what we saw previewed for the upcoming expansion, which we'll talk about shortly. But, yeah, some of the...
a little chilly in here.
Oh, yeah. So, some of the, any kind of late game strategy that comes online at turn 10 or later, or in fatigue or something like that, is just muted and made obsolete if this kind of deck is too strong. And, we might even, if this doesn't nerf the deck enough, we could conceivably see another nerf of it,
Yeah, it's possible.
We'll see, though. I mean, only time will tell us.
It kind of would be embarrassing, so...
Yeah, it'd be embarrassing, but I don't think it's really too far off. I don't think that's like impossible. A good example. This was incredibly embarrassing for Wizards, but recently in Standard, Emrakul was banned to weaken the Aetherworks Marvel deck, but then a set later, the Aetherworks Marvel deck was still winning, just with a different, really expensive card, so they had to ban another card from it, and then, it took them 2 rounds of bans with plenty of time in between them in order to destroy this deck completely. And we might see something similar for Crystal Core, or this will be enough. We don't know.
Yeah, it's, it still seems like it could be too oppressive, but the aggro decks just might spank it so effectively when it's 5 that it's just so unappealing to play that you can safely play your control decks, and maybe you'll lose a small percentage.
Yeah, totally. It doesn't matter if you go from even if this deck would go from 70 to 68 against a slow control deck or something like that in terms of percent win, but if the prevalence of aggro on the ladder is high enough, the deck is still unplayable because your matchup against aggro dipped way lower than that.
Yeah,
so.
I've tried a lot of different shifts, like using backstabs, eviscerate, tower creepers, and none of it really works as well as you'd want it to.
I can imagine that. I mean, a lot of the decks are just a lot of the swarm decks are just so resilient. They make unfair boards so quickly.
Like, just vicious fledgling. You're like, Jesus, not again. It feels so bad. You're just playing, fireflies and bouncing them to your hand while they're crushing you with a 7/7 Wind Fury.
Yeah, that card is. I like it. I like playing it.
Sometimes you get the Glacial Shard, and then you can actually win that matchup. But if you don't have Glacial Shard as the Quest Rogue, then you're not beating Token Druid really ever, and that's before the nerf. So.
Yep, I mean, I've lost to Glacial Shard plenty of times, but I've absolutely annihilated them way more often than I've lost to Glacial Shard in that matchup. But I think we could. Do you want to move on to our next topic, or do you have anything more to say? All right. So recently they
so ready.
Oh my god, this is so hype. I was at work when I heard this announcement, and I was freaking out. I was so excited. They announced the new expansion for Hearthstone. I knew it was coming soon, but I didn't know what it would be. First, it started with a leak in the morning on the Chinese Hearthstone website. They had the banner up for the official animated banner for Knights of the Frozen Throne.
Oh yeah, some kind of big GIF.
Yep.
Or at least some of the heroes, it looked like Rexar and stuff.
Yeah, it was a bunch of the heroes, and they had those Scourge undead eyes, and they were looking all dark and evil. And the Frostmourne was in the background, and that tower from the northernmost zone in Northrend was there. So it was it was clear that they were going to do an expansion based on some of the aspects of the Wrath of the Lich King expansion of World of Warcraft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Northrend as a setting and lichy stuff was going to happen.
Oh yeah, so this is awesome. I think that this will be a huge flavor win for Hearthstone. Wrath of the Lich King had the largest number of subscribers were present in Wrath of the Lich King than any other expansion, so that was their peak subscriber for World of Warcraft.
So we know that people like this stuff.
Yeah, people liked it. I mean, at the very least, a lot of people will have fond memories of Wrath of the Lich King, and they'll be like, "Oh, I remember us playing WoW around then, and this is making me nostalgic and happy." Maybe more so than like Ongoro Crater or Gadget Sam, which are both sort of isolated zones. They're not that expansive.
Yeah, they kind of would remind you of maybe one time during your play, like when you went to Gadget Sand or Angoro, but they weren't expansions unto themselves. Like
Right.
the Northrend and going to the north in the Wrath of the Lich King expansion introduced so much stuff that it's going to call forth remembrances possibly of years of play.
Oh yeah,
And lots of iconic bosses.
oh totally. Yeah, so many iconic characters and flavors and themes. Oh, it's so good.
That's another big thing that's going to be different with this expansion, because they said they're changing sort of the structure with the adventures and
Right.
how you're going to be able to do adventure type stuff to win packs. And I think they're going to be doing that with this expansion.
Oh wow. Oh, that's awesome.
I think that you're going to be going to Northrend and fighting your way to the Lich King through the bosses from World of Warcraft. But as far as I know now, instead of getting specific cards, you're just going to get packs.
Yeah, I think that kind of makes sense.
I think they mentioned it. It was like it's in the 8-minute extended video where Ben and what's his name. I feel bad. Ben and the other very talented designer are talking, and they definitely mentioned the bosses. I can't remember if I'm fabricating the idea that they said they would implement that this time, but they said they're going to. Why wouldn't they do it now?
They said they were going to add single player content in place of the sort of CCG style expansions where you buy it and get a set of cards, after completing a set of single player content. They said they were going to include single player content in upcoming expansions, but it was just going to take them a few sets to do it. And this could be the first opportunity. It would make sense because a lot of the adventure style single player expansions in the past have actually been raids, and this one might be focused on like the that Ice Crown Citadel raid in Wrath of the Lich King.
They definitely mentioned it and the throne and the king himself multiple times. I think they'd be missing an opportunity if they didn't make some boss style content out of all that.
Yeah, I mean, whatever they do, I trust them. I've gained so much respect for the designers of this game over the course of playing it. I think they've just gotten so great and so bold.
Did you see the 8-minute video where they talk about the new set?
I actually did not know.
Because they reveal a couple individual cards too.
I definitely saw the reveal cards, but I didn't watch the video.
I have one. I quote it that we can talk about. I'll pull it up right now.
So I think they revealed 5 cards total.
But there's there's also going to be a new card type. You saw that, right? The hero cards?
Oh, yeah.
That's wild.
I want to spend some time on this. I think that there's a lot of interesting... I mean, all right, so the hero cards are cards that when you play them, they give you a little bit of armor, or at least the one that they revealed is for Hunter. It's 6 mana. When you play it, you gain 5 armor and you do 2 damage to all enemy minions, and then your hero power changes. And your hero power changes to something in which you can...
Zombeast.
So you do a series of discovers, and you basically, kind of like Kazakus potions, you build your own beast minion. And then it goes in your hand.
Nuts. Yeah, that's so many things. Like
it's a lot.
you change your portrait, there's like an aesthetic change. You get armor, and there's going to be hero cards in every class, so suddenly every class is getting armor. If you've ever been a rogue and you copied your opponent's shield slam, you might be able to start playing it more effectively now. So that's going to be fun. There's every class getting a way to get armor, which can be relevant with Ice Block, Alexstrasza. There's Amara. There's a ton of ways that just the armor part is really neat.
Totally.
And then it sounds like the battle cries are no joke. Like this consecration in Hunter. Like Hunter very rarely has a super wide, powerful removal. It's usually kind of random. or just like direct damage like quick shot, and this is just straight up 2 damage to everything. So that opens up a lot of potential for maybe a slower, more control style hunter, which so rarely works.
Yeah,
Its cards are so often focused on being proactive that it's very uncommon a pretty control-y or even and slower hunter can work. But this, getting a bunch of armor and wiping your opponent's board is a great start to that.
Yeah.
And then there's the hero power, which is crazy. You just put the text and stats of 2 minions together. You could, and it's always beasts, but there's so many different combinations, like Savannah Highmane and Tundra Rhino.
Oh my god. I think it also combines their mana cost, so you'd have an 11 mana minion if you did that.
Oh, okay. So then maybe. Okay, so there's some limits to it. Granted, Savannah Highmane and Stone Tusk board.
Sure. That's really good. I take a 7 mana 7/6 with charge. That sounds insane.
Like
that dies into 2 guys.
We're gonna see some crazy crap coming out of this zombie hero power.
So
absolutely nuts.
I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So this is as a concept, changing your hero power. So these do things when they come out, and I think that's actually necessary. I think that they realized they had to do that during design. But these kinds of cards that change your hero power are designed to give you when you're playing this deck that is trying to play these cards, you want the game to be longer. These cards are designed to give you value over the course of many turns. So PVDR, a Magic player, said that your hero power is one of the best sources of card advantage in Hearthstone, and that is absolutely true. And
Certainly.
if you improve your hero power, a la Justicar or some of Priest's wonky cards, or some of the cards in TGT that didn't take off, but if you can improve your hero power and keep it improved for a long time, you can gain an absurd amount of value. Because you don't need to draw cards in order to get a strong effect anymore. You just have access to it. So these hero cards that are improving your hero power are going to give you a lot of value every turn for the rest of the game. And if you add up all that value cumulatively, you'll just outvalue your opponent if they're not doing the same thing. So if the game goes long, it favors the player who played the hero card, because they're just getting more value a turn than the opponent.
For sure. And then, so that's the kind of thing that Quest Rogue would very much like to see.
Yes, right.
The Hunter hero card is pretty terrible against the Quest Rogue.
Yeah. So I was thinking a little bit about that. I think that's certainly maybe one of the reasons they chose to nerf Quest Rogue. I mean, it's hard to know because we've only seen 5 cards of like the 130 or whatever that are in the next set. But if hero cards are a part of it and they're all going to be about incremental value, maybe they won't. We'll see. Then nerfing Quest Rogue makes sense, because that would otherwise mute the hero cards in the same way that it muted some of the quests. But also, I think that they took extra steps that we can see in the Hunter hero card to avoid this problem from happening. So the armor and the battle cry that removes some of your opponent's minions, that's designed to buy you an extra turn or 2 to get value out of your hero power.
Yeah.
If you've ever been playing Control Warrior in against an aggro deck that's beating you, it doesn't matter if you play Justicar on curve, you just lose.
Yeah, you really need to just continue to live until you can hopefully Justicar hero power.
Yeah, I mean, card advantage just doesn't matter how many cards are in your hand. It doesn't matter how much more cards you've drawn than your opponent. If your opponent kills you before you can play them,
it doesn't matter what neat hero power you just got.
Yeah, if you're dead, it's just you don't get any value out of that if the game ends before you can use it. So killing your opponent is a great source of card advantage for that reason. And these are at least the Hunter one is designed to make the game go a little bit longer as soon as you play it, which is wonderful.
Because that's the only way it's going to be good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's such a liability to play. If you ever play Magic, you tap out and play an enchantment that has some, whenever you do blah, make X happen. Those kind of cards can be really cool, but they don't do anything as soon as you play them, and that's a really big problem. And
that's
this is similar to that.
It's a huge inhibitor for ever actually getting to play the card.
Yep. But these do something when you play them. I think that's so good.
And that's what made Ragnaros and Azure Drake what they were.
Oh
is because
yeah.
they always at least did something and then still had to get answered.
Yep.
Um, and so that's what we want to keep seeing them do with their fun, interesting late game cards, is give them a little bit of extra edge to allow the late game to happen.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely something we've seen in Hearthstone. The strongest late game cards are cards that do something immediately, and maybe these hero cards will join the ranks of those sorts of cards. I mean, if you're playing a fatigue strategy, a deck that would not mind drawing every card in its deck, having a better hero power is a great way to ensure that you win the game. I mean, a degenerate example is Jiraxis. You know, if you're making
Mhm.
6/6s every turn, you only need to do that so many turns
That
before
beats
the
a
game
lot
is
of
over.
stuff.
It beats a lot.
It beats 5/5s.
It sure does. Well, I mean, they just do 15 to your face, and it's all charge damage. But 6/6s are bigger than 5/5s, that's for sure.
Yeah, or after you transform into Draxus, you could then play the new Warlock hero card and get some armor.
Ooh.
But then you won't get 6/6s, but who knows what that card's going to do. But flavor-wise, this is also so cool that all these characters are going dark side. That's like not only a fun thing, but it seems like at least with the Hunter one, they also sort of did it mechanically. Hunters
Right.
usually like the Hunter hero powers, 2 damage to your face, no card advantage, all trying to kill them, and that's generally how the deck is played. And then this hero card is just yelling and shouting, "Go the other way," and play a slow control deck that makes a card every turn. And so it's also like they inverted how the hunter would play in addition to what side he's on.
Oh, that gives me chills thinking about what they're gonna do for Priest. Oh, I'm so excited.
I'm stoked for some hardcore Shadow Priest,
Yeah.
and some like Death Knight Paladin action, like some heavy hammers coming down.
Oh my god.
They're introducing lifesteal, which is super fun.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about that too. So I think these hero cards want the game to go longer, and a mechanic like lifesteal, for those of you who don't know, any damage that a card with lifesteal does, you recover that much health. So this mechanic is inherently a game lengthening mechanic.
Hmm.
So there are a lot of cases where it's good. It's good in aggro. It's good in slower decks, more controlling decks. But it's good in those decks for the same reason that it buys you additional turns to do stuff.
Makes
So
it harder for your opponent to kill you.
yes, it makes them harder. You can win races. It makes them harder for them to burst you down or kill you quickly. It slows them down. It slows them down when they're trying to kill you. So that is wonderful when you include that kind of mechanic alongside the hero cards that are improving your hero power and giving you value over the course of many turns, because Lifesteal will buy you more turns. So granted, we need to see it on the right minions. It's not worth playing a bad minion just because you're going to gain some life whenever it attacks. But if you could imagine a 2-mana 2/3 with Lifesteal, or a 1-mana 1/3 with Lifesteal, those kind of cards would be great.
Yeah, and right now we have a 2-mana 1/4 with lifesteal. That's,
We do have that.
The Mistress of Pain or whatever.
Yeah.
That card wasn't quite good enough, but
No.
they did reveal a Paladin card, 4 mana, for a 3/2 charge lifesteal. So that is really great because it's guaranteed to give you at least 3 health.
Yeah, that's quite
if you
good.
can somehow pump it, like let's say you're playing Blessing of Kings in your deck,
Yes.
then on 8 mana you could deal 7 damage and gain 7 life.
Or
And
Spike
have
Root Steed.
a 7/6, which is nasty. Spike Root Steed on that guy? Whew! Don't
Yeah.
even get me started. Then Crazed Alchemist it too, of course.
Of course, the next turn just blast them for 1,000,000. Sounds good.
So, Lifesteal makes pump effects better. That's sort of an effect that is often not good enough unless you go all in.
Right.
And pump effects in Token Druid are amazing and not that common in almost every other deck. Or it's sort of like very temporary, like a Flame Tongue Totem pumps your patches and then you trade your patches.
Yeah.
So Lifesteal rewards you for pumping a minion and keeping it around, even more so than a regular one. And it allows you to focus on continuing to smack your opponent rather than dealing with their minions, because you're getting healed.
Right.
So this could make us see more of the pump cards in Priest and in Paladin that don't get played. Maybe seeing some play, or the spells that pump demons and Warlock could be more powerful and more meaningful with a bunch of lifelink demons, which I'm sure we're going to see. Maybe some vampires. So that's great. And you made a distinction. It's not just minions. There's going to be spells that have lifesteal, so that means if you have spell damage cards, you can even gain more life. That's not how some cards work. Like, there's definitely cards that say do this much damage and gain this much life that don't say gain life equal to the damage dealt. And so this would actually be able to heal you for more. These life cards. Or lifesteal cards.
They gave us one already called Spirit Lash. And Spirit Lash is Whirlwind with lifesteal increased.
Oh my god, this card.
Yeah, that kind of card would be really strong in the current metagame against the Swarm decks that are playing a lot of minions that are very little, because it would kill some of them, and it would buy you turns by doing damage to all the others. That's very strong.
I think that saying it would be good is an understatement. I think it would be extraordinary to have that card right now.
It'd be really good.
It is so good with spell damage. It's so good with Blood Mage Thalnos.
Oh yeah, that was exactly what I was thinking of. Because I mean, 2 mana is a bit of a ding, but when you have a deck that doesn't mind running Blood Mage Thalnos, because you have other damaging cards too, you run Holy Novas, then that's really bonkers. Also, if you play Thalnos and then this card, you didn't even play 2 cards, you actually just really played 1 because you draw a card.
And he increases the amount of life you gain. Like, if they have 4 guys, you can Blood Mage, play the spell, and gain 10.
Yeah, that's insane.
And plenty of times, like a token shaman will have more. A quest rogue will have more. So that's a card I'm pretty excited for.
Oh yeah, me too. So actually, we do have a good metric on how good lifesteal can be. So a card I think is pretty similar to a lifesteal minion that does see play is Ally Armorsmith.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a great comparison.
So Ally Armorsmith is a taunt. It's 5 mana for like a 2/7, and every time it deals damage, you gain that much armor. So that's very similar to lifesteal. It's probably a little bit better most of the time. Right. But there are of course edge cases where it's not. But putting lifesteal on a taunt minion that sort of has not so much power but has a lot of toughness could be really good.
Yeah, that's there's definitely magic cards that are like that prove to be extremely strong. That's another thing to look at. What kind of lifesteal cards were good? Things that were hard to kill, didn't have to have a lot of power, but were just difficult to deal with, like Vampire Nighthawk. Right. If instead you trade the evasion, the flying, for just a lot more health, that's such a chore for an aggro deck to deal with. Like a 2/4 lifelink. Like, do they attack into it and give your opponent a bunch of health? I guess there's Wicker Flame Burn Bristle has lifesteal.
Yeah, it does.
But think about how annoying that card is as an aggro deck.
Oh my god. Yeah.
So it's definitely going to be another way, like you said, for these slower decks playing hero cards maybe to be successful. Did you want to hear about Prince Keleseth? Have you seen this guy?
I have not.
So this is a legendary minion, 2 mana for a 2/2.
Oh yes, I have seen this guy. Go on.
Battle Cry. If your deck has no 2-cost cards, doesn't say 2-cost minions, just no 2-cost cards of any kind, give all minions in your deck +1/+1.
Hunter Quest.
That, I did not think of that. That's gonna be nasty.
Yeah, because I was thinking this type of effect is strongest when you're playing a lot of minions, but if you can't have any 2-drops, that sort of works against you. But if you play all 1-drops,
now you're thinking with portals. Yeah, the card sounds mostly awful to me at first, because basically the best Hearthstone cards are the 2-cost cards.
Yeah, sure.
Or at least in my opinion. And if you have a deck full of things that cost 3 and 1, a lot of the 1s kind of going to be underwhelming, and then a lot of too many 3s is going to be slow. And you're not drawing Prince Keleseth every game. He's not a quest. But you raise a really interesting point with the Hunter quest, because then you're definitely going to have a ton of cheap minions,
Hmm.
and a different game plan for it. Um, the only other class I thought of really with this guy would be Warlock, actually.
Hmm.
Um, Warlock decks tend to have a lot of power in their 1 mana and 3 and 4 mana cards.
Yeah, right.
And they also have one of the best hero powers, maybe the best hero power. Um,
Oh, sure.
it's they're one of the decks that happiest to spend 2 mana hero powering instead of playing a card that costs 2.
Yeah, totally.
Um, and because of uh, Warlock's willingness to pay other things instead of mana, so Warlock will pay in discarding, or Warlock will pay in life. They get to get very strong effects that maybe would have been 2 mana for less, like Soulfire. Like that kind of, like, Mage would have to live without Frostbolt, which sounds awful, but Warlock could still play Soulfire. Warlock could still play Shadowbolt. So, and when you think of a Reno lock deck, it's mostly about maybe like a Zombie Chow, and then leading into Earthen Ring Farseer, Death Lord, and Twilight Drake. You really don't. There's like Acidic Swamp Ooze. The two is not that critical, and when I think of Warlock decks, I don't think of any critical 2 mana minions or cards in general.
Yeah, but the granted that type of slow deck would also care the least about giving your minions +1/+1, because this
Very
effect
true.
is this effect is most impactful when the minions are inexpensive, because then proportionally the amount of percent gain you get on the minion quality per mana spent is way higher. When your
Oh
Firefly
yeah.
becomes a 2/3 instead of a 1/2, then
hmm
that's absurd, and that's way more absurd than your Sylvanas becoming a 6/6 rather than a 5/5.
Yeah, it would definitely have to still be relatively low to the ground.
Yeah, sure.
Um, and that's another nice thing about maybe playing it in um, Hunter. You can get some low cost charge minions.
Yeah.
Those are really good with this as well. Only way to really get immediate value out of your minion that got pumped. Dispatch Kodo,
Oh yeah, for sure.
Pack Rat.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, Hunter also has good twos, but
hmm
depends what you're doing. I mean, you can probably live without it. Firefly's basically 2-drop anyway. Um, but yeah, so I think this new Knights of the Frozen Throne is gonna be really cool. I'm so excited to see more spoilers for it. I'm very excited about
Dude.
the flavor of the expansion. It's great.
Yeah, they did such a good job, like setting it up. Um, they sort of had like a graphic of what sets were coming out throughout the whole year,
Right.
and that was really vague. And then they had that GIF that you mentioned, the banner, um, and you should definitely check out the video on their website. That's where they reveal a bunch of the cards, and they talk about dates. I think they said that they're going to begin more spoilers on July
I think it's 24th, 27th.
24th.
Could be 27th or 24th. One of the two.
The week, we'll say the week of July 24th is when the spoilers are going to continue, and then the set's coming out sometime in August. I don't think there's a specific release date yet, as per usual. But you can buy it now.
Right. Only seen these 5 cards. But hey, I mean, it's probably going to be cool. So,
Oh, it's going
but
to be cool.
I think that about does it. Do you have anything more to say about Knights of the Frozen Throne?
Um, I'm really glad that you pointed out all these meaningful things about how much sort of help these slower decks are going to get, because that's really what I've been missing from my Hearthstone lately. And I'm excited for the Quest Rogue nerf for that reason, but also for Knights of the Frozen Throne as well for the same reason.
Yeah. I'm hoping that it makes slow decks great again. That'd be really good.
Make slow decks great again. We should definitely end it on that.
Yeah, that's a good title too.
Yeah, thanks so much for listening, everybody.
Yeah, thanks. So if you want more of us, you can find us on all of our usual places. So you can find us on Twitter at LastTurnHS. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/LastTurnHS. You can, as always, find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, or Google Play. You can also find us on YouTube, and we're on a number of other podcast aggregator services like Stitcher. So,
did we ever get on Libsyn?
I don't think we're on Libsyn. No,
Okay.
I should look into that. But there's we're always trying to increase the number of places that we're on. So if you like to listen to a particular service, but we're not on that service, you can contact us on Twitter or on Facebook and suggest it, and we'll definitely try to get our podcast on that service for you.
Yeah, definitely let us know if we can improve it in that way, or if there's a particular topic you'd like us to talk about, or some kind of thing you think would be fun for us to do. We won't ignore you, I swear.
Yeah, totally. Hit us up. We'd love to hear from you. That'd be really exciting for us.
You can also find us at lastturnhs.com as well.
Oh, yeah, that exists now. I think that brings us to the iTunes page, right?
Yeah, for now. We're working on it.
Oh, yeah, we have big plans, as always. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks so much.
We hope that you've explored the Caverns Below enough, because you might not be doing that for a little while.